It is hour number 2 on a very cold Tuesday afternoon here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're going to get the hour started by going down to Texas, where we welcome in our man, Mr. Zach Barnett of Football Scoop. What's the temperature, Zach, in the great state of Texas right now?
Earlier this morning, we had schools canceled because it was simply too cold. Wind chill
really
was down to 0. Yeah, it was just flat out too cold.
Well, here I am thinking that I was going to ask you what the weather was, and you were going to tell me it was like 60 degrees or something. So I guess it's just cold everywhere.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's God mourning the end of college football.
That's probably what it is. It's like a big cold funeral. That's what it is. And college football will rise back once again in the summer as we get set for another season. But one coach that won't be there is Nick Saban. And I'll just ask you this: a month ago, if you got wind that Nick Saban would in fact be stepping down, who would you have said is the next coach?
That's a good question. I probably would have gone Dan Lanning just due to the fact that he'd been there before, and it was pretty stunning to watch it play out in real time. The fact that, Nick Saban has many legacies in college football, but the fact that he seeded nearly every SEC program at one point or another with one of his former assistants, and the fact that either none of them would be offered the job or none of them would be interested in the job, and that Alabama would either by choice or by necessity go completely outside the family. That was the most surprising part to me.
Yeah, and I mean, Saban, you could spend there's probably things that nobody's yet to really uncover or realize when it comes to the impact that he had on college football and just the state of Alabama and their university. I mean, the amount of people who decided to go to Alabama because of the brand that was established, and not established, but kind of, brought back to life under Saban. And of course it hit a new level is crazy. It's I've never been an Alabama fan, and I've never really found myself pulling for Alabama, but towards the end here, even this year, like whenever, they slipped up and lost to Texas and everybody thought that Saban was done. In the end, they were right. He did retire. But, if they'd have won the national championship this year, nobody would be surprised, because that's just that's what Alabama football was under Nick Saban. Now, the coaches that got extensions from this whole thing, Mike Norvell, Dan Lanning, and who's the other one? Sark. How many of those coaches do you think were truly pursued or even offered? I feel like it may be tough to know if they were offered, because it seemed like it would have been a quick offer. But do you think that there was a real interest level from those from Alabama to those coaches?
I would be surprised. I don't have any proprietary info here, but again, I would be surprised if Lanning and Sark did not just at least get phone calls.
Yeah.
And especially the fact that those guys are repped by Jimmy Sexton. I mean, you wouldn't even necessarily need to have a phone call. But if you're Greg Byrne,
Sark and Lanning are both Jimmy Sexton clients?
I believe so.
I didn't know that. That makes total sense, but I didn't know that.
I mean, if you're Greg Byrne, you can say you got your number one target, and of course he's the only guy they offer the job to. But you're not doing your job if you get on a plane to Seattle and first don't at least see what those guys think about the job before you offer it to somebody else. So, did Alabama sit down and have a conversation with Steve Sarkisian? I don't believe that ever happened. Did they have one with Dan Lanning? I don't believe that ever happened. But did Greg Byrne have an idea of their, I guess, lack of interest before he pursued Kalen DeBoer? I believe absolutely.
Mike Norvell never had a chance, right? Like, I mean, given what happened with Florida State this year, there's just no scenario that they were interested in him and he just decided, nope, I'm staying here. I mean, to me, that was the one that just didn't seem as realistic, especially when you just consider the ACC and the SEC. But then again, Saban and Bama, that whole situation is truly, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime scenario that I can think of in my lifetime, where clearly a phenomenal job, great resources, you have everything you need to be successful, and there's probably not a coach that was at a better position. But I could see maybe some coaches saying, hell no, I think I could win there, but I ain't Saban, and I don't want to walk into that and follow in those footsteps. So again, who knows if those guys got offered, but I do feel like maybe I'm crazy, but I think people would turn down Bama, and it would shock a lot of folks. But if you really think about it, it would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we saw was all the speculation of 10 years of Saban. Just you wait until Saban leaves, and I certainly think there was a time when they would have just handed the keys to Dabo, and everyone would have been happy. And who knows, maybe even Kirby Smart, but that time's come and gone. And it was interesting to see Alabama, the King Kong of college football, the New York Yankees of college football, and that they're just kind of synonymous with the sport. They were subject to the same market realities as everyone else. And I do believe I'm with you that Mike Norvell was kind of the last on the list. And maybe that's just because he was the last guy to announce his extension before Alabama hired Kalen DeBoer. But I think in some ways he would have been a great candidate there. I mean, he's built Florida State back from they were worse off than Washington was when DeBoer got there, and you can't hold the Orange Bowl against them. They certainly would have been a playoff team had Jordan Travis remained healthy. And I mean, that's a guy who you look at the beginning of his Florida State tenure. That's more adversity than some guys face in his careers. And there was a time when I thought it was going to swallow him whole, and he emerged stronger from it. And he would have gotten Alabama with recruiting ties to the area. But they chose to not go that direction, and it's understandable.
Sure. I think whenever Norvell was at Memphis, I remember being a little bit stunned that he wasn't getting more traction for Louisville whenever Bobby Petrino was fired. And I don't really know why, but sure enough, he ends up at Florida State and didn't get off to a good start. But in the last couple of years, he's broke through, and I don't see them taking many steps back or any steps back, really moving forward. But yeah, I like Mike Norvell, but to me, it seemed as if, he was somebody that probably, given the way things played out and the way that, it was out of their control, right? I mean, they won every game and still got left out. But I feel like it was a good situation for him to kind of like I think Florida State fans probably feel good because they probably believe that Alabama wanted their coach, and yet they got screwed. And it was an awful way to end their season in every aspect of getting burned by the committee, although I think it was the right decision. And then also, the way they lost to Georgia. But now that, I think the way it played out does in fact make sense. Now that we know that it is Kalen DeBoer that is the guy at Bama, I mean, we all know about his resume now, a guy who's climbed the ladder and been impressive at every level. I mean, your thoughts? I mean, given, the landscape, do you feel like that's a hire that makes sense for them? I've not heard much criticism for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you're seeing some people kind of try to talk themselves into a take that I'm sure will ferment by the time we get to August. Is Alabama actually going to be better coached in 2024 than they were in 2023? I
that's the kind of momentum he has.
Yeah. And he's got. I think the Alabama fan base is going to be the biggest fans of all time of the 2019 Indiana Hoosiers that you've ever seen since they put that dream team together with Kane Womack as his defensive coordinator. But I mean, I'm a big fan of the guy. You don't go 104-13 at any level of sports by accident. All the guy's done throughout his entire career is win, and I would probably, if you put the sports gun to my head, I'd take the field over Alabama to win a national championship over, say, the next 5 years. But I expect Alabama to remain a fixture in that race. And there's just so much to play out that we don't know how he's going to recruit, how he's going to handle the portal, all that stuff. But I mean, I think it's a good hire.
Zach Barnett of Football Scoop is our guest, joining us here on Sports Talk 790. Michigan national champions Jim Harbaugh has interviewed at least for one opening. Probably won't be the only one. He interviewed for the Chargers job. Just your feel for his situation. Do you think he's going to take one of these NFL jobs if he gets offered? It certainly seems like one of these franchises is bound to offer him. At least that's the noise that's out there. Maybe that's just what he wants out there. Do you think he'd go? And if so, is the obvious move to just elevate Sherrone Moore?
Yes, I do believe Jim Harbaugh's coach's last game at Michigan, and I thought that win or lose
Really?
last Monday night. And I think the next guy is already in the building.
Former Louisville assistant, Zach. How about that?
Whether he can, yeah, I think he'd be the first to tell you it's his Louisville days that got him
Absolutely.
to the cusp of coaching the defending national champion.
Without Sharon Moore at Louisville with Charlie Strong over a decade ago, they don't win the national championship last week. Facts.
No, that's absolutely true. Whether he's able, I mean, he did a fantastic job as the interim, especially in that Ohio State game. Whether he can maintain that energy for 52 weeks a year, obviously we'll have to wait and see. But if you're Michigan, you've got such a good thing, and you climbed such a hard road to get here that there's no doubt you could go out and hire a really good head coach. But you've got to at least see if you can keep it going. And David Shaw did a really good job for a time as the head coach at Stanford, taking over for Jim Harbaugh. And I think you've got to keep the train rolling along the track it's currently on.
All right, let's talk administration here, because Ross Bjork, am I saying that right? Ross Bjork, is that how you say it?
I think it's Bjork.
Bjork. Okay, no, so the J, yeah, Bjork. So he's gone from Ole Miss. He was there from 2012 to 2019. Has been at A&M since 2019, and now he's heading to Ohio State. I feel like you don't often, maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like you don't often see the high-profile ADs kind of move around, right? I don't think to me it seems kind of unusual to see this much movement. But the reports that I have, the reading, I shouldn't say it's reports, but I guess just more so opinions being put out there by a lot of folks reacting to this news as he's leaving A&M to go to Ohio State, is that NIL was such a powerful thing for A&M despite their struggles and lack of success, that Ohio State is now bringing him in because they feel like he could help initiate a better system, which I'm not even sure if that's allowed, but we all know they're doing things they're not really allowed to do, but you got to be careful about it. But just curious your thoughts on this. I mean, A&M, it seems like a great job for him, and now he's going to Ohio State. I'm sure it's a great job as well. But do you think NIL is a big factor in them pursuing him?
I hadn't really thought of that. My initial reaction was I don't know why Ohio State would hire him. I don't think he's done a great job at A&M. If you just look at the on-field results and on-court results, there was a time, middle of the previous decade, where you could have argued Texas A&M had the hottest athletic department in all the country, and that was pre-Ross Bjork, and no one would be arguing that today. I think his hires.
Who was there before him?
Obviously, he didn't. Oh shoot!
Was it a guy who went to LSU, or there's some kind of an LSU
Scott
component?
Woodward, yes, it was Scott Woodward.
Is he the one who gave Jimbo the crazy contract?
He gave him the contract, but Bjork was there when they gave him the extension. So blood on both of their hands there.
And the extensions are worse because they're oftentimes just not necessary.
Yeah. If they had just let him work under his original deal, then Jimbo would have been over halfway through it.
Yep.
By the time they fired him. So I think Ole Miss fans weren't sad to see him leave, and I don't think A&M fans are sad to see him leave. And if you look at your Twitter account, Ohio State's gotten, I think, literally everyone other than Marvin Harrison back. And these days you don't do that without a solid NIL program. So it seems to me, I'm sure they can improve. It seems to me like they're doing pretty well in that department.
Now, what did you make of the Florida State situation? Because I think there's still so much gray area with NIL, and it's all like people are probably just doing what they assume is allowed. And I know that the administration in the athletic departments, they do have folks who try to remind them of compliance, but it's never been to me as big of a gray area as it is right now. So again, maybe this just makes me seem like a dumbass, and I do that pretty often from 3 to 6 on this station. But what they accused Florida State of doing that led to them getting punished, I thought that is literally what everybody did, and that's just how it worked, and it wasn't against the rules.
I maybe if you're a dumbass, then I'm there with you, because
all right,
that was my.
It makes two of us.
Yeah, I thought that's literally the textbook of how it's done. And certainly we're not alone. And I think people that are in our club with us are college football coaches that have and are doing the exact same thing.
And there are coaches across the country that read that and are like, oh crap, like I've been doing that since day one. And it just is a reminder of how little, full control the NCAA has on, on anything. So, all right, last question for you, Zach, before we let you go. Do you think we'll see any big conference realignment stuff this offseason? It's been pretty chaotic the last couple of off seasons. I know obviously you've got some big moves coming where the ACC is bringing in a couple of California teams, obviously Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC. The Big Ten's adding some West Coast teams as well. Will this be the first off season where we don't have any big news in regards to some movement?
I mean, I think that at this point, kind of like the on-field product and NIL and all that stuff, it's in the hands of the courts.
Yeah.
If Florida State's able to sue their way out of the ACC, I 100% believe they will do that, and other schools will follow suit. But if that does not happen, then I don't see any big free agents left on the board that would move at this point. I mean, the SEC is not picking up Arizona State. I can promise you that.